All right, last hour of the conference. This is, what is this, session 21E? 21E. And let me pull my app up here, make sure I get all this right. So we are, okay, oops, here comes my poll. Prioritization algorithm enabled by data sciences allows to prioritize data science with Karan Dhawal. And do you have panelists or
So Shri
co-speakers?
Salem and Sid were not were able to today because of logistics issues. So I'll be taking over their slides and trying to cover it up. So
Okay, great.
yes.
All right. I'm David Levine. I'm the global leader for digital transformation at New Era Consulting. I used to be one of the owners in a company called Fusion Alliance, which we've been a sponsor here, and I've participated for 9 years. So you may have known Fusion Alliance from the past. We're now New Era Technology. And I'm proud to be at this conference. It's one of my favorite, well, it's my favorite conference that we do every year because it's all about education. And I'm going to hand it over to, well, and questions, we're going to hold them till the end. Please use the microphone. I'll bring it to you if you ask questions. And if you're online and you have questions, just go ahead and put them into the Huva app and we'll take them from there. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for being here. This is the last one. And they usually say save the best for the last. Maybe that's what they did. I do not know, but thank you for being here. I want to first of all also thank Shri Salem and Sid Kukureja, who helped me through the PowerPoint. Of course, sorry they are not here today because of logistics issues, but we work together on what I call this AI for AI. I represent a company called ZS, Zolters and Sinha. We are deep domain experts in a pharma company, but we also do a lot of beyond healthcare work. So we'll talk about AI for AI today. And what I would like you to kind of focus on is 3 different outcomes, right, from here. First is, an AI-driven process can accelerate your business prioritization, right? Which projects to choose, why to choose, when to choose. We'll also talk about, what features will allow you to digitize that AI algorithm, right? If you want AI to pick your projects, pick your AI projects, right? We'll talk about what kind of data do you need to make that happen, and talk about that and our experience. And then, of course, how it might apply for your organization or for your customers, right? So those are the 3 outcomes we'll talk about. Of course, post the questions in the app, and we'll talk about those in the end. That being said, the slide has a lot of information on it. The first poll question also would be part of the slide. But as a customer, I've been on the client side for 25 years. I've worked across 7 different companies. Average time a company takes to align on a project, right? When we write business cases, things like that, is about 6 months. They'll take 6 months to, if we don't have the budget, what projects to do. We've got too many projects going. Which one go above the line? Which one go below the line? That process usually takes 3 to 6 months. Once a project is approved, everyone is saying, when is it getting done? When is it getting done? And usually, they give you about 6 months to get it done. Show me your value in 6 months. Well, why did you not approve it sooner, right? And now you approve it around Christmas time, and you want us to work over Christmas. So being on that side, there are many different types of projects. So the question here is, right, you have too many things going on: value creation, revenue growth, time to market. You want to do data projects. You want to do a project on data culture. You want money for data literacy, right? Many things. Well, if you are the decision maker and you're accountable to make it happen, and you only have budget for maybe 1 or 2, which one would you pick, right? So that's one of the questions in the poll. The reason I was very passionate, and we were very passionate about creating this AI for AI is because we are keeping that time away in deciding what project to do and which project will be successful, and we're spending way too much time in alignment, right? And that takes away from your customers, right? Customers are looking for results and data products and products in general faster. And that's what we've heard. So that is why I will a little bit talk about what is an approach we can take where it's not saying AI will rule it, but AI will allow you to prioritize, and then of course human in the loop, your data asset steering committee or executive steering committee would still get to decide, what those projects are. So we can probably look for if there's answers on, which projects would you choose. I would say it depends on the situation of what the business strategy is and data strategy is. But any of these would be top depending on what the company wants to do. But the point here is trying to say that it's hard to choose which projects to pick and approve and align the budget for. That being said, this is the gist of what we are going to try to talk today and the concept, right? AI for AI, how to prioritize, right? You have enough projects going on. So how would you prioritize on the projects? And then once you prioritize, right, what to approve, right? So you could have a prioritization index, you could have all the prioritized projects, but everything cannot be number one, right? So what do you approve and where do you put the budget, right? And this is again all the leadership discussions, right? And the discussions at the leadership of, hey, do I approve my pet project, the one I really like and whatnot? Or in other words, do I stop a project where I've spent $10, $15 million, but it may not be bringing the business value I need, right? It goes both ways. So what are the inputs to an AI to help through some of those decisions and make that faster, right? So of course, business strategy, looking at stuff which is already on data science marketplace. If the company is mature enough and they have a data marketplace, but also a data science marketplace, what AI has already been used, right? And what can be reused to accelerate a business strategy or a data strategy? How much adoption is there in the business? How much leadership support you have, right? Again, not the pet project leadership support, but leadership support across to say this is what is needed for our business, things like that. Obviously, the intention here is to have revenue growth and operational excellence, and also high business return initiatives, right? To pick the most important one for the business, for the company. So that is the concept of how to use AI for AI and why, the why. We'll talk about, of course, the how and the what. But before we go there, let's even talk about the applicability, right? When can you use this? You cannot use this for everything. Most of the time, it is recommended for centralized. So if you have a centralized data science organization or a COE, right, and you have I would say 1,000 AI ML cases, ideas. You're a mature company, you've got a lot going on, you're a global company, and you have so many ideas coming from the business, from IT, data science, and you have to pick between, top 10. What do I do? That's when you use it. If you are a decentralized organization, you have data science team, a COE, and they are empowered, you could still use this AI for AI, right? But if you are decentralized, and you have low AI adoption, right? This is not the tool for you. And same thing, if it's centralized, but you have low AI adoption, you have 3 data scientists, well, this is not the tool for you. So this tool is only if you have, a big team of data science. They're embedded in the business. They're embedded in the line of businesses. They're embedded in, your other companies. And of course, you have a centralized way to at least track all the ideas. That's when you use this, right? Well, let's talk about what does it does. Why do we even want to use it, right? The average savings we think, and we have seen is at least 3 months, right? Because what it does is you'll always need that traditional process. And in the traditional process, you have to, collect all the use cases, business processes, recommendation from the board of, do all of these projects. Then you prioritize and align. This is where it takes a lot of time on the, what initiatives to do, what the sequencing should be for the initiatives. Of course, working with the, talent management, vendor management process, working with the CISO, all of those processes would still be needed. What AI for AI does is the bottom right. The model itself will tell you what the initial recommendations are. What are the top 5, 10 projects the company would benefit from, right, the most? You take that, and that takes you, that saves your 3 months of what POCs should be approved, right? Obviously, everything else from the compliance perspective, procurement perspective still needs to get done. But now you're doing it for the right things. You don't want to go through a cycle of, I want to start this project. You work through the procurement cycle, and then later on say, you know what, this project is not a priority anymore, or we don't want to do it anymore. So it saves that 6 month of cycle. And obviously, the other important part of AI for AI approach is it is customer centric. You know exactly what the POC will do for your customer. You can validate it and then really approve it as a formal initiative. It's cost effective. It's insights driven, right? You're not really focusing on, again, like I said, I have the budget. I'm the budget owner. I'm going to approve only my project kind of feeling. That culture or pet project culture or this is the business unit which makes the most money, so this is the reason why this project will be approved because of that business unit. So all of that kind of goes into a different mindset change. So this traditional approach, has a lot more barriers. So AI kind of takes away some of those barriers and recommends you the top 10 or top 5, whatever you want to configure the project. So again, it works through what we call as a business use case prioritization score. So obviously the whole process of having 1,000 projects, putting that in an Excel, giving them a score and saying what are the top 2 or top 10, all of that is what this process automates. That's the intention. Well, what do you need for it to automate, right? There's so much of data. How you digitize, how do you even create an algorithm for it, right? It's an agile process. Not all of this is easy to do. Again, as a poll question, the question here is a rhetorical question, right? What one key model variable is the toughest one to digitize? And the answer is all of them are tough to digitize, but it all depends on the maturity of the company, right, and the culture. The easiest one I've seen, which is the way that this POC was done, is take the historical data science initiatives, right? How many projects have been done by the data science team, what the results were, and what the business impact were there, and obviously how long the projects took, and what the growth was enabled for the business by those projects. So those are easy to digitize, right? It's kind of lessons learned database, similar to that data science database. You talk about strategy constraints. Those are also the things you can digitize because you can say, here's what is going on from a market business rule perspective. Here's working out, what is going on in global economy, things like that. Data strategy constraints can also be digitized. Data health. So this is where mature companies will already have KPIs for their data health. They will have data quality dashboards. They'll have data owners defined. Governance is mature, so you can easily digitize some of those and say, hey, if I'm trying to go to this line of business and approving this AI project for this line of business, what is their data quality score, right? So that could easily be digitized to say which project to pick. Talent availability. So if you have a domain expert, and if you really for a project you need a domain expertise, and if you don't have that kind of talent, the AI will say, well, you don't have talent in that particular geography, region, line of business, or for that particular competency. Call it finance, call it supply chain, or whatnot, and it will say, well, that's not the right time to do it, right? So those are, I would say, easier things to digitize. The little tough ones are, economic value. What do you think we will get an ROI on this project once we do it? And I think a lot of the time we talk about, capturing that ROI, and it's tough for data projects to capture an ROI. So that's a little tough. But again, perceived economic value, time to value, those kind of things could help digitize those. Business value at scale. So once this POC is done, what is the market potential for it? Can we scale it? Do we have revenue projections? Those are the kind of things where finance would get involved and help approve a business case. So some of those things, if the company is mature, finance is a mature organization in that company, could easily help digitize it. And of course, compliance. We heard a really good presentation on compliance and privacy. So again, similar things where if there's a project where there are less compliance issues, and it could be implemented faster, then that's a better POC than where you have to go create a framework for data ethics or privacy laws are there, and then those projects will of course have a little longer time period to implement, and of course ease of implementation. So some of these feature set from an AI perspective could be digitized and are inputs to deciding the AI for AI thought process. One of the ways to do it, again, it's looking at an agile approach to do it. Right, you cannot get all of the input needed for the AI algorithm. So you have to capture the leadership decisions. Right, you have to capture decisions in the company on is this a build versus buy kind of culture in the company. What are the tools and capabilities which are available to make it happen. There are many art of possible options. A lot of companies are spending a lot of time on art of possible. So trying to digitize some of those experiences of, hey, we did an art of possible 5 years ago. What did we learn from it? Can we document that in a process where now that can feed into AI? So those are the kind of things this prioritization engine can help. And the engine gets better the more input it gets. So, and we talked about the historical data science initiatives, strategy constraints, talent availability, business value at scale, economic value, data health, and ease of implementation being those pillars for us to create those as key feature sets inside the model. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion on generative AI, so we had to add the slide in the end. Right now, of course, generative AI can help in a lot of different things. The 4 big pillars we have seen, and some of this could be used to help digitize some of those inputs. Those 4 pillars, is what we call as coding assistance, right? So talking about talent availability, right? So if you are using generative AI for helping with GitHub Copilot processes, automating some of the developer way of working, 15 to 20% of productivity can be gained there. If you're using analytics assistant, right, when you're doing analytics, recommending insights, recommending next best action, those are the kind of things we're seeing which can help again to digitize some of those inputs. Answer engines, so of course this is where a lot of third-party APIs are emerging, summarizing project business KPIs, so finding out which KPI is applicable for which business, how are the KPIs being used, which KPIs are now becoming more important as we try to take new POCs. All of those could be fed into the AI engine. We talked about data health. So data health obviously is an umbrella term for data quality, governance, trust, data observability. So all of those, if the company is mature, some of those metrics can easily feed into the AI engine, or what I call as the prioritization index. And then of course the adoption. So this goes back to, we've heard data literacy training, metrics coming up, who's been trained on what, how are they leveraging the training, who's finished the training, who got the batch, from a training course perspective. That data is readily available to easily feed into the model. That way you can easily say, hey, this particular finance group is data literate, and starting a new project in finance is much safer than starting a new project, let's say, in manufacturing, right, or a plant, things like that. Talent availability, also again those metrics from HR of what the attrition rate is for this department, how many open positions are there in this department, how many specific roles are there in the department from a data perspective. All of those could become inputs into the algorithm to help come up with that prioritization score. How would this engine work? And not sure how the slide got turned around. That's kind of unique, but that is funny. This probably got changed, but anyway. So we'll continue. This is how we live with it. But anyway, so yeah, that is a practical joke. I have not seen this happen, but that is funny. So again, on the left side, I'll read it. Business outcomes, historical prioritization score, historical actions, extracted features. So all of the 8 things we talked about, this is just a input to the engine. The first thing you want to do is do a similarity engine, right? This project has been done in the past in this company or in a different line of business. How would this new project work? Was a prior project successful? If yes, what are the kind of things which made it successful? Do we have all of those things? Yes, okay, give it a high score of success, and it should be a highly, and the prioritization score for that particular project would go high. A prediction engine of how do I look for, based on the historical actions, plus all the talent availability we talked about, usage of the leadership, digitization of the leadership actions, the data literacy results, data health results. Now, how do we predict that this particular project should be rated higher because it's got more chances of success? Like we talked about the finance example. If the finance team is very well versed with the data metrics, data health is good in their organization. So starting a finance project for a CDO is a lower risk and higher probability of success than starting a project, let's say at a factory plant where everyone is really busy in production and they're already short-staffed. Right, and then based on that, the third portion of this would be a rational engine to kind of create that recommendation, but also explain why the recommendation was created, and what are the features which enabled the highest score for that outcome. So also learning of not just this is the high score and this is your project to do, but also being able to explain why these 5 projects came to the top, right? And all of that, again, as part of a learning engine to keep this going. And a feedback loop to make the prioritization algorithm better and more accurate prioritization score for prioritization of the projects. And then again, in the end, the outcome we're looking for is not to replace a data asset steering committee or an executive steering committee. This becomes input where the asset steering committee, the decision makers, the C-levels can easily look at and say, hey, my module has given us these 5, 6 projects. What do you think about it? Which of these 2, 3, or 4 make sense depending on what budget you have and the business strategy and things like that. Okay, I'm glad this slide is not upside down and or different. So this is the last slide. But then this also kind of talks about, it's also not a one-time done deal, right? It is something where we have to understand the prioritization score, right? Create more inputs to it, provide better data to our AI engine. It is a framework, so you take the framework and enhance the framework. You leverage the business use case prioritization score as an initial non-biased recommendation for budget approvals, right? And then you add more input into to say, yes, this recommendation was good, and it actually helped the company once you finish the project, right? It also is a starting point for designing the future state for business enablers. So once you start seeing a trend of these are the types of projects which are always approved or coming up from the recommendation engine, it can actually drive your business strategy because it will say, why are we always good at these kind of projects? So we should be doing these things. We shouldn't be doing, going into new markets. If our prioritization engine is always saying, penetrate an existing market or go deeper into an existing market or existing products. So in a way, the outcome can also be, at some point be, these are the type of projects which are always coming to the top. And why is that? So that can actually help in your business strategy and data strategy. And obviously, one of the easiest way to do that is, and as an outcome also, is the inventory of key initiatives and prioritization backlog. So a lot of the companies are going into agile mode. So this also helps them to prioritize and say, okay, these are the projects which we can easily prioritize and reprioritize every 3 months. You don't have to go through the traditional yearly budget cycle for approval and say, hey, my project never got approved, wait till December or January next year and maybe we'll get the budget. well, this is an iterative projects process, so you can every 3 months decide which projects are approved, which one is still at the top, and if there's any sequence changes on that, right? So that is all about questioning and learning from the algorithm and the prioritization score process. The next, of course, one is enhancing the prioritization score, right? So you have a backlog which comes in as a starting point for the leadership alignment, right? This is all about leadership alignment and acceleration of the value for your business. So it's a place to start, right? It's not saying that this will ever replace the decisions which are needed at the steering committee, but this is a point of start. That also means there's frictionless alignment, right, across senior business leaders. Once this becomes acceptable, and becomes the mode of operation, then the trust is there to say, what, I believe on this prioritization algorithm, and you can name it whatever you want for your company, right? Aldo, I believe on Mr. Aldo, the algorithm, to tell me the top 5 projects, right? What does Aldo say, right? Whatever the name we want to give to the algorithm for that company. And then, of course, the algorithm gets much better once you have more, input from the data engineering team, the team members as part of the project to say, yeah, you picked that project, and that project actually helped us because we already had the data in our pipelines. We already had the data owners, very engaged in the process and things like that. So that actually builds on the trust that the projects picked or recommended by the algorithms were more successful. And then, of course, in the end, any projects where we can do accelerated POC and show the value to the business, would get a higher score in future. So that is also an outcome where now you can start doing self-service models where people want to say, okay, if I really want my project to get approved, I really want to make sure the data quality for my data which is needed for my project I'm proposing is there, right? So a business executive can easily say, if I really want my project to be approved, I want to go down and understand what data I need and is that a good data quality? Because if I don't, doesn't matter if I have the budget, now the board is only going to approve the projects where the prioritization score is high. And my score is not going to be high because my data quality is not good. So once this becomes a habit of, if I really want to get my project approved, it's not just my logic of I'm the budget owner and I'm going to get my project approved. That cultural change happens because now it is project will get approved only if it passes your, Aldo test, like call this guy Aldo, or prioritization score. And now the executive thought process changes, right? And now it also becomes the projects which are more chosen are the projects which are in long-term success for the company versus the pet projects, right? Obviously, the expected outcomes will also ensure, the algorithm will also ensure that the rules are checked, they are compliant, their ethics and inputs are all as part of the prioritization score. And this goes back to as we mature, the inputs into the algorithm. And the inputs also have the privacy concerns and compliance concerns. All of those will help come up with a better score. So that's the intention for it. And again, last question, which is, do you think this concept will work? And if yes, which we have tried with a couple of clients, what organization changes do you think are needed to make this work, right? What do you think we need to do differently to make this work, right? Of course, it's a cultural process change. Some people have to, give a little bit of power away to say, yeah, I always don't want my pet projects. I can trust an algorithm to give me at least some guidance, recommendations, guidance to be able to pick from the projects I want to pick, right? Give me a pick list to pick, right? Rather than me doing the hard work of saying, which project should help me in my journey as a CDO, as a CTO, or a transformation office or a CIO. With that was the end of the presentation. We're open for questions. Thanks. Questions? Anybody?
I have a few questions, but I'm going to ask the most important one, because if that is wrong, then my other questions don't need to exist.
Okay.
In parts of the presentation, you talk about projects in general, and in parts just AI projects.
Yes.
I don't have thousands of AI projects. I may have thousands of people talking about it, but in fact, if you ask, can you please list? It will be, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Would this rationale apply to any prioritization? At points in the presentation, it looks like it does.
It does. So I have had prioritization score. I've worked for many global companies. So I've had, and many companies have already come up with a simple Excel or a way to say, I'm going to give a prioritization score, right? And they have a way of kind of going through a project approval cycle, right? It may not be mature, but every company has a way to decide which projects get approved. It could be a big, enterprise, upgrade project, or a big, change the software and bring a new software kind of project. So yes, it could work. But those projects, when you are working on a business strategy and you are trying to pick on projects, that list is small. You don't really need an AI to pick between 20 projects to say which one is important for the company, right? So this one is very specific to if you have a very mature organization, you have a lot more ideas coming up, and now you need to pick between the AI ideas.
Yeah, no, I understood the volume argument, and I do have thousands of projects, but I don't have thousands of AI projects. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Like, it could be AI for project prioritization.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. And now, so even in AI, for example, there's this new technology coming up. AWS came up with AWS Bedrock, right? And Bedrock can enable, let's say, 20 new use cases, which in your business you could start. Well, out of those 20 use cases, which 3 do you pick, right? To start with, because you only have that much of talent. You may have more technology now to do more projects, but then if you only have that much of bandwidth to do those projects, what are the top 3 use cases you pick, right? And so this is where it can help you find out a little bit of where to prioritize and how to prioritize.
And so that is also assuming that we can do a bit of archaeology on the history of success and failure of projects, which possibly with one of those tools you could unleash it into your documentation for, 10 years, 15 years. Isn't that doing recommendation looking in the rear view mirror instead of what executives are supposed to be doing, which is monitoring the market, perhaps imagining different scenarios? Is it trying to replicate what succeeded rather than recommend what is necessary?
Yeah, so both, right? So to train and to start somewhere, right? Like I talked about agile approach, right? The very first input could be the historical data science initiatives, right? Because that is where you have that data easily available. If you want to create something, that is where you start with, right? But in the end, the most important, of course, is the business value at scale, adding that future-looking, strategy constraints, right? Here's what we want to do as a company, and these are all our constraints, and when the constraints go away, then you will get a recommendation to say, now start this project, right? But definitely, these are the types of inputs you will need to digitize at some point and add them in the thing. Historical one is usually available, because again, at any company, right, even when they're trying to start a data science journey, they will start with 2 data scientists, and they'll say, okay, do 5 projects a year. And then the team grows, you show the business value, now you have 50 data scientists, right? So now when you have 50 data scientists, how do you keep track of all your projects and the business value gained from the 50 projects? How do you reuse the AI, right? So that is where all of that is that historical AI and data marketplace, I call it, right? Or data science marketplace, I should call it.
And I'm sorry, I missed the few minutes of the front of the presentation. You may have addressed it, but do you have a model for prioritization, or is this a framework that you're?
It is a model.
It's a model.
It's a model, but again, it's a POC model. It's not a mature model.
Okay.
Right. That's the part, right? These are all the things which need to be built in, but we've been able to use this model.
So these features are additive to the model
Yes.
as it stands today?
Yeah, these need to be added. Yeah,
Okay.
these would, depending on the maturity at the client or depending on the maturity at the process, this is what would be needed, right? Yeah, this would be the end game, right? But you start at what is available.
Okay.
Right? And of course, the need of culture to say, yes, we have too much going on. I know I was talking to one of the, I think it was Cigna CDO, and he's like, hey, we spend literally every 6 months prioritizing over what AI we will do in the next 6 months, right? So 6 months of planning and 6 months of execution, right? So this is where some of this would work to say you have too much going on. How do you prioritize? Yeah.
I'm sorry to monopolize. You
No,
guys
we have
have
time-
to
we have
tap
time for
me on the
questions.
shoulder.
Yeah, we have time for questions. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm struggling a little bit to understand how executives would even accept a score provided by an AI engine, an algorithm, given that they don't necessarily accept what is already algorithmic, albeit on a spreadsheet. Right? So we go through the exact pain of filling in return on investment, predicted economic value, do we have resources, maybe not all these dimensions. I grant that there's far richer examples there. But they don't accept it. They do accept backstage lobbying. I'll give it away because I've put backstage lobbying in the poll, so it's me. Right? Backstage lobbying, right? So when you go into a board meeting, you already know who is going to vote for your thing, right? So if I'm a scientist and I trust that we've done the best possible analysis, impartial, that is aligned with the strategy, and AI contradicts what everybody else has been backstage lobbied about, I don't see that as a convincing mechanism.
It is not. But the whole intention, when we talk about the word data-driven, that basically means the backstage robbing should not happen because you're data-driven. You're showing the data to the leaders, and the leaders are deciding whatever the decision is, right? For project selection or for product selection, which products to make to sell in the market next year, or where to grow or what acquisitions to do, all of those has to be data-driven, right? If you're going with a data-driven approach and maturity for leadership, this just helps them to get to that decision faster. In the end, it's still their decision. But yeah.
Just I'll add comment on the way over. I think what she was saying, though, is the backdoor lobbying is still going to trump.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard, I think, to convince them to accept this as the answer and to decide based on it.
Yeah. It's a recommendation. It's almost like influencer. So think of this as one of the influencers, right? Because anytime you want a big project to be approved at the board or whatnot, you need influencers, the voters, right? Think of this as one of your virtual voters for that decision making. I think that's what it is.
When a board member sees this, how much transparency do they see into the different pieces that build up to the total
This has
score?
not gone to the board level yet. This has gone to
Okay.
the IT senior leader. Well, again,
Senior
the person
leadership,
who was not
okay.
able to be.
Yeah,
But
but
fair question.
what
Yeah.
level of information do they see? Do they see just the final score and they know the pieces that went into it, or do they
Yes.
get like basically a report out on each of the different pieces and what the state of health is for that attribute? And
Yeah. Ideally, they would see everything. This is a POC, so we've done it with 2 of the inputs. We haven't baked the whole input in it yet, but typically, yeah, that's what the whole AI promises, right? It doesn't have to be a black box. AI doesn't have to be a black box. It has to show you, the context of why that was scored high and why that was recommended high, right? That context setting is part of, I think, most of the AI projects now, right? So yes.
Yeah, and I'll just add a comment. I mean, this is kind of the world we live in, right? Where you're trying to convince people to become more of a data-driven kind of culture and decision-making kind of entity, right? And they still want to trust their gut. No, I know my business. I know my clients, right? And we've done countless engagements where we've had to go through not having any kind of a tool that spits out that intelligence, but a long process, months, to analyze and synthesize data to prove them right or wrong, right? And then expose that so they understand it, right? And still they go kicking and screaming sometimes, right? But I think that's the world that we've lived in for quite a while. So we're kind of used to that space. And the reality is, it's really hard to change that culturally. And there's some organizations I think that are going to struggle with it more than others. And oddly enough, the more like democratized the culture is, I think they're going to struggle with it more. Where if it's a single strong leader who believes in this change, then it'll be affected more. And I've seen that bear out time after time, right? So it's really an understanding of, and then you have to ask yourself, so if I live in a democratized culture where everybody has a vote, right? And that's just the way it runs, then the question is, what do I do about that, right? And so you may have to come down a level in like political sensitivity and in a fiefdom where you can affect that change that's logical and data driven and get some wins and then show that to the organization and bring it up. It's not, it's a hard thing, Here you go. Yeah, it's a hard thing.
Well, I like the idea and the concept. But I think if I understand what you said in the use case, this is for a scenario where you had a grid, a matrix that had 4 quadrants, and where you were saying
it is, yeah.
it applies here, it doesn't apply here, it doesn't apply here, it doesn't apply here. So
Yep.
yeah, so I think, was your vision to have this model be focused on AI, ML, on the emergence of use cases at scale in large organizations that create demand for those capabilities, and using this algorithm as a way to narrow that field down to the top ones that you should. But you need a certain volume of activity in order for that to be the case.
That is correct. There are so many ideas with all this technology being out there, right? People want to take claims data and then want to use generative AI on it. They want to take all the user manuals and user guides and want to get some recommendations from the user guides and start shorten the time of training, right? So there's so many use cases that it's hard to pick which ones are most important and which ones are hard, which ones are easy to do first. So this is a way, and you're right, the grid is the most important thing here, is to say, this is applicable if you have a mature organization, a lot of data scientists, a lot of different projects coming up, and it basically allows your COE or the data CDO in this case, assuming CDO is the leader for all of the centralized data science team, to decide what to actually take to the business.
So you've obviously, you guys have invested some time and thought around this. I'm assuming that there was some demand signal that you saw in your client base or in the
Definitely.
marketplace that suggested it would be worth your time to try and solve this problem.
Definitely.
So can you give us an example of an organization, a specific organization where this problem solved would be worth the investment?
Yeah, this is where Sid, who was the CTO of CUNA Mutual or TrueStage,
Okay.
he was not here today, but again, they're rebranding to TrueStage. They work across all the credit unions in US. There's a lot of demand coming in from credit unions on leveraging AI on, for different processes, and different credit unions have different processes. So obviously, this is how we came up with the idea and worked with him.
Okay.
Apologize, he could not be here today to talk about his personal experiences and add to it.
So I'm a computer vision researcher, and I'm interested to know what modalities of data how do you collect them, and how would you use them to train your model, and what type of would your model be more statistics based, or was it like deep learning based?
you would start with a base stats model, and then you would go in the deep learning phase. Again, this is where the first important thing is to digitize, right? What can we digitize? What data can we put in and is available, right? So most of the time it's about availability of the data. and
So the
what
data
else.
would be the backlogs
Yeah, so
of
we
the
can go in the
internal
details.
operations.
Yeah, so if you want, I can take your information. We can go in the details, more specific. I think you have more specific detailed questions, so we can go that. That wouldn't cover in this one,
I see.
right? But what I'm saying is there are multiple ways to digitize, and this is how you digitize it. And then of course, start with the base stats model, and then you go into the deep learning models to help you with that.
I'd also imagine.
Yeah. So with the POC, we did not use large language models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd also imagine a lot of domain knowledge necessary to actually pick out the correct data to use and how to structure the data as well.
Yeah.
Specific to corporation
So again, every
operations.
one of this is a different call it stakeholders to learn about the data. So there is definitely some domain knowledge needed. Again, this is for that particular company, right? So then they need to have a little bit of, here's how we collect the data, here's how we approve our projects right now, things like that. So there's definitely, there's always a prioritization index which they currently use. That becomes your input.
So each different company would have a different backlog of data, and they would probably have a different model that would fit them.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Therefore,
This is not a SaaS solution. No. Yeah. If that's what you're thinking, this is not a SaaS solution. This is not a one size fit all. This would be specific to the company. Again, the whole end goal is that cultural change, right? I want to use, be a data-driven approach to pick projects and define projects versus, my pet projects. So think of this as a long-term cultural change.
So building on that in terms of a cultural change, especially in this type of, that upper quadrant where it's a huge, organization, centralized decision-making, back-channel discussions. Just wondering what guardrails you may have thought about in terms of the anti-patterns that we may not want to see of people trying to game the system. Like one of the dimensions you said, for instance, was like, if the data is available, the readiness of the data and the quality of the data availability as being one of the features to, into the model, and okay, I'm going to spend a lot of my company's money to do this, where, just because, of course, I'm the center of the universe and for my use case is the most important, and then, the implications of that on the overall business as a result.
Definitely, great question. Sorry, I ran through the slide before, so there's one section of the slide I did not cover. That is the best practices. Thank you for bringing me back there. So again, we got to quantify the inputs, right? That's given, right? If you can quantify the inputs, then you have more confidence. That's the guide rail, right? Agile mindset, right? We talked about start small, right? This is, you don't want to take it to, all your projects in the company across and getting, so start with a small group of, okay, let's take all the AI projects for finance, or let's take all the AI projects for supply chain, that kind of approach. Create a similarity engine and a prediction engine. So first similarity engine to say, yes, we've done these kind of similar projects before. Most of the time, the leadership will always go back to, yeah, we have done this before. Let's try to start a similar projects like that. For example, if you've done a big SAP or ERP, any ERP implementation before, and now you want to do another ERP implementation, the company would be more open to it. But if they've never done it, then obviously they have the bias to, I really don't want to do a big ERP implementation kind of thing.
Then one will say, I'll never do it again.
Yeah, exactly. If it didn't go well, then they'll never do it again. Things like that. So there is definitely the best practice checklist we have of what would make it successful, and then in the end, stewardship is needed for the line of business owner, because in the end, recommendation will go out. The line of business owner, right, or your stakeholders have to still say, yes, I believe, I had a hunch that this is the right project to do, right? Because in the end, the magic happens when their gut feeling matches the recommendation, right? But yeah, once in a while it will match, once in a while it will not. But if they're convinced of why it doesn't, and we're able to show that, hey, this is the reason why it didn't match your gut feeling, that's when the magic happens. It allows for those discussions, right? It allows for those tough discussions which usually do not happen. It's usually at that leadership level, it's my budget, my way, or the highway. This allows you for that discussion to say, can we talk about it, right? So this gets you on the table to talk about it. So think of this as not a technology tool, but think of this as a data culture discussion tool, to start with. Obviously, it will become a technology tool as we make it better, right? But the intention here is to get to the table to have this right discussion to say, why are we being forced to do that project versus, can you tell us why this project is important? If that makes sense.
And so just clarifying question. Actually, I have two questions. So clarifying
Yeah.
question on the last one you said. So are you saying that one of the guardrails you could put is having like a manual check, so you could sort of kind of A/B test, like what is the machine responding and what this human decision could have been with the same information?
So that goes back to, that's a very tricky thing. The human decision is only, like we talked about, the human decisions would have been if people are sharing those decisions and if it's not part of the steering committee, right? So you don't get the steering committee decisions before the steering committee happens. So it's hard to say what is on everyone's mind, right? I've been in many situations, because I was on the client side, right? Many situations where you have to work through 25 101 meetings to actually get your votes to say, can we really get this project approved, right? And then you would say, yeah, I think it'll get approved, right? Because now you decide how many votes you got out of the 25. So this takes away that, hey, we think we've got alignment through a proposal from our tool to say this is a good project to do for the company and here's why. Yeah. So you're right, this is the gain. I would say it gives you a logical way to have the discussion where otherwise someone would have just, again, this goes back to the whole company culture too, where the projects are forced on the team versus discussed with the team, right? That's the intention to change.
And just one last question. I mean, since each organization is different and since it does have a lot of implications on the culture, right? You're building that data culture, and I think decision making is also very much of a organizational, personal way of going about it, I imagine. So are you thinking that maybe a future version of this, you might allow organizations to customize which features are included and maybe
Definitely.
add, okay.
I did not mention external data. There's always a lot of external data to say, so-and-so company did a similar project, right? And what were their lessons learned, or what was the success rate and things like that. A lot of the time, actually, it's, many companies are not always first to market, right? So they have always references to say, hey, someone else did a data governance project, or someone else did a whatever Salesforce project, or whatever it is. And then they try to reach out to those and learn about the pitfalls. So you're right. So right now I did not purposely add external data as
Actually, external data is counter to what I was thinking.
Yeah.
External data is now you're being influenced by the market, and I was thinking more about really you're grounded in your own values, you're grounded in how you want to make decisions and your strategic thinking, and being able to personalize, right? Or here personalize meaning organizational personalization.
Yeah, I think that would probably be like iteration 15 of this.
Iteration 15, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. No, so that is probably the toughest thing to do, right? Digitize. That's the toughest thing to digitize, like we talked about, right? What is the most important thing to digitize, or what's the toughest one to digitize? That's probably is, right?
I'd like to ask whether there are existing benchmarks of your model or similar models or frameworks that would help a business prioritize its decisions.
I have
as of now?
not been able to find anything. This is unique. I've not been able to see anyone come up with a similar model or the idea. So this is.
Because I'd also imagine if you would have to train a model for every single business, you'd have to train a model for every single business. Since 10,000 businesses
definitely.
out there.
So this is very, like I said, very narrow focus, right? It's going to start with the company which has thousands of AI, and they got to pick between which top 10 to worry about, right? So that's the intention. Again, it's a narrow focus versus a problem solution for everyone, right? So.
Be interesting to see how this works out.
Are we? This is a great question, Mark. I love it. Are we? Mark, I like.
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet?
That's where my struggle is, because even a large company, like I wouldn't see this, if it needs volume at scale to be, because like prioritization matrix, like you were describing yours, they exist. We put things in them. We make decisions.
So
we let the politics go, because the C-suite is always very political, and the bigger the company, more political it is. I just can't see the case where, even if you had if you were a $100 billion company, $200 billion company, you'd have that many AI use cases to where you would need AI to determine.
Think of this as feature engineering. Yeah. So
Like a Google and like some of those.
oh, they have Cigna, Google, AWS.
Yeah, they would, yeah, but that's a small, like,
No.
Decentralized from the point of view of
Yeah. Let me answer that question.
Compass.
On are we there yet, right? So I didn't put any screenshots of the platform. So we have a platform called Max.ai at ZS, and it allows for feature engineering. It actually will recommend you what data engineering features should be used in your models, right? What data engineering features should be used for your personalizations, things like that. I did not put any marketing slides in here, but the question is, are we there yet? The demand is there, right? People want AI to tell you or recommend you, at least initially, what to do. So that enhances their thought process, but in the end, the decision is the leader's decision.
I was just curious, like I like all of the features as far as I think they're all really important. I was wondering about like the idea of risk though, like an ethical risk that we were talking about previously. Is that captured under ease of implementation? So would that be like low score for ease of implementation, or is it captured somewhere else? Or
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to say that is that I'll give you an insurance example. I used to work for an insurance company before, right? If I'm starting with a new implementation of Guidewire, which is the software used in the insurance industry, and if I'm the leader and have to pick which state I go to first for implementation of the Guidewire software, I will not pick Colorado or California or Massachusetts, right? Because I know they have a lot of laws, right? I would pick an easy one, right? And that could be Louisiana, Mississippi, or others, right? So anyway, so that's what I'm trying to say. So some of those things are so compliance rules or privacy rules in that same case, right? If you were doing a global privacy implementation for a client, you would want to say, hey, I want to pick these countries first, right? We did the same thing for SAP implementation. I did a global SAP implementation for Owens, Illinois, makes glass bottle. We decided which countries in LATAM we go first, right? We said the last country we'll go is Brazil. The first country we will go is Colombia, right? Because Brazil has much tougher rules than Colombia, right? So again, so from that aspect, yes, you can build that in the algorithm, but no, we can't really build the ethics, because again, that framework doesn't exist in many companies, right? You can only build what exists. But great question. I really love the discussion. Any questions online? Or
Let's see. I think there was one.
okay.
Let's see what it says. All right. One question online. It says, what are some of the leading algorithms that are evolving and potentially a future must-have in, say, 10 years? Now, I don't know how anybody can say anything about 10 years from now. I can't even say anything about 12 months from now. So
Tough question. I did get trained on AWS Bedrock, which just came out last week. Some customers have been getting access to it. Comes up with some really good algorithms. So again, I think companies like Microsoft and OpenAI, AWS are making leaps and bounds of technology advancement, and it's hard to predict, but definitely it is here to stay. We just need to, like we talked about, have a framework, ethical framework, and work through what is good for the company and good for the community. Right.
awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for being here and being so engaged in the 4 o'clock hour of the final day of the conference. I don't know that I've ever seen it quite so peppy, so that's great. I appreciate it, and thanks to everybody online. And
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
thanks,
being
Karan.
here. Thank you so much.
And everybody travel safe.
Thank you.